She's nervous when I told her.
She's nervous.
Yes, she's going to speak to me.
What about you? Tranquilamente.
No, ahorita.
Okay. Well, this is really a wonderful day for New York City. And I want to welcome everyone, thank everyone for being here, thank all the great folks who are standing with us today for being with us. Thank our friends at the Queens Library here in Flushing, an extraordinary facility that epitomizes this city. This library is for everyone. When you walk around these halls, you're going to see every kind of New Yorker. People who've been here a long time, people who just got here, all together in the common cause of making this the city we believe in. So this is a great place to talk about what's happening today all over the city. 17 locations like this where people are going today to apply for their municipal ID, IDNYC. This is a historic day because for hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers, this will be the first time they could get any kind of ID. And for hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers, this is the first time that ID was made simpler for them. And there'll be tremendous benefits in that process. So, if you're like me, you're going to go get a municipal ID card. It's very stylish. We have our map here. We have the Brooklyn Bridge here. They did not consult me on the design, but if they had, I would have said include the Brooklyn Bridge. So it is a beautiful card, but really what's beautiful about it is what it stands for. It stands for everyone being respected, everyone being included, everyone having opportunity. That's what we believe in, and this card epitomizes the values of this city. It epitomizes the history of this city. It epitomizes the values of this administration and our colleagues in the City Council. So this is a launch of something that will make life better in this city. And it fulfills a promise that we made, that my administration made and the City Council made, to uplift so many New Yorkers who needed to be recognized and respected. It will give people much greater access to the basic services that are necessary for life in this city. It'll literally tangibly allow people full participation and full opportunity. Something as simple as this little card. I really want people to understand the tangible impact. One piece of plastic, but it's going to open so many doors for our fellow New Yorkers. It's going to make their lives better. Because in the absence of identification in a modern society, there are so many things you can't do. This card's available to everyone. It's going to mean people can lead fuller lives, better lives, lives full of respect and recognition. I'd like to acknowledge the elected officials who are here today. You're going to hear from some of them, but I'd like to acknowledge others who have really played a key role. Danny Drum, lead sponsor of the IDNYC bill. Danny's been a passionate, consistent, unwavering advocate for this legislation, and he was focused on it from day one, and we would not be here without him. Let's thank Danny for that extraordinary commitment. Now, a former boss of mine used to say it takes a village to raise a child, where it takes a village to create the right kind of ID card as well, and a key member of that village was Councilmember Jimmy Van Bramer, chair of the Cultural Affairs Committee, because the minute we started talking about how to make this card even more appealing, even more important in people's lives, he was focused like a laser on making sure that our cultural institutions participated fully. And that has been one of the great additional elements of this process, was the involvement of our cultural institutions. And what I've loved about that is we had a wonderful event up at the Bronx Zoo some months ago. Cultural institutions so fully embrace the notion of every kind of New Yorker participating and enjoying these institutions and learning in them, bringing their children, bringing their elders. This is a transcendent moment, not just because of what the ID means, but because we're going to open the doors of these precious institutions to more and more people. So I want to thank all of the cultural institutions who were such tremendous, energetic allies. I want to thank the man whose district we are in, who's been a great supporter and has been a powerful advocate for immigrants, Councilmember Peter Koo. And I want to thank the folks here at the Queens Library and also the leaders of the other library systems who really embraced this. Now, again, we've all seen plenty of situations where a good idea didn't move forward. We've seen plenty of situations where a good idea got lost in bureaucracy or turf. But this is a case where people did the right thing, and they really deserve credit. The cultural institutions joined in, the libraries joined in. The libraries even said, we want to be the place people come to get their IDs. We want to go above and beyond. We want to be that portal, because so many people in our communities see the library as a place for everyone, a place they're comfortable going. It's the perfect place to come and get this ID that will open up their lives in so many ways. So I want to thank Bridget Quinn Carey, who is the interim president of the Queens Library System, for hosting us in this wonderful facility. I want to thank Tony Marks, president of the New York Public Library, who's been Tony has been a huge booster of this idea, and it is very consistent with his larger philosophy of making libraries a place for the community as a whole. So, Tony, thank you for your support. And I love all libraries, I love all people, but I especially love the Brooklyn Public Library. So I want to say to Linda Johnson, thank you for your support. And in Brooklyn, there are lines around the block, just as there were here in Flushing. There's 17 locations all over the city, and what we're hearing from all of them is huge demand, huge interest, people flocking to those libraries today to get their card. Now, I also want to say so many people who won't get famous in this process, but sure deserve to, brought us to this day. Hardworking staff at the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, Mayor's Office of Immigration, HRA, NYPD, so many people who worked for months and months to get this right, along with the hardworking staff of the City Council, and a number of the commissioners who worked on this are in attendance. Let's give them all a group round of applause. Let's be clear about the reality up until now in this city. For hundreds of thousands of people, ID was out of reach for a lot of reasons. For one thing, we're just different from so much of the rest of the country. About half of the residents of this city who are 16 years old or older don't have a driver's license. That would be inconceivable in other parts of the country. But here, the actual use of a driver's license is just much lower for obvious reasons. We are a city, a lot of people come here from all over the world, all over the country. So there's a transient dynamic that means it's harder for people to get ID quickly. We recognize that any time a person has an ID, I don't care if they happen to be an American citizen or they happen not to be, it's good to have ID. It makes everything simpler in life. How many times you go into a building nowadays and you're asked to show an ID? How many times do you want to do any kind of business transaction, you need an ID? But it's amazing how many people don't have a picture ID. So part of this policy was to correct something and improve the quality of life for people across the board. Part of it was to recognize, as a city of immigrants, we had to honor our history. We had to honor that which made possible New York City today, which is generations of immigrants. We had to honor today's immigrants just as we honor our forebears. Recognize that almost 500,000 of our fellow New Yorkers are undocumented and had no possibility of getting a picture ID, and that meant no leases for apartments, no bank accounts. That meant if someone had an encounter with law enforcement, even a positive encounter with law enforcement, there was no way to prove who you were. And law enforcement is very clear. The simplest act is to ask someone their name and to verify it. When you can verify it, things go much more simply. When you can't, it gets to be more complicated. So we got a lot of support at the NYPD for the notion that it was better to have more and more New Yorkers have an ID card. And we had to do it the right way. We had to do it a way that people would have confidence in, that they would find appealing, and would find easy to access. And a lot of work went into that. We are adamant that people cannot and should not live in the shadows. We don't want any of our fellow New Yorkers to feel like second-class citizens. We don't want them to feel left out. We want them to feel disrespected. And this ID addresses substantially the notion that we all matter. And everyone has an identity. By definition, everyone's identity should be recognized. Now think about it. Think about how often we pull out our ID card and think about what it means for someone who doesn't have one. Think about how it holds them back. You're going to hear from Esther Sanchez Morales in a moment. She's going to tell you about that reality. And if people can't do the basics in life, it holds them back. It holds their families back, let alone what it makes them feel. So IDNYC is going to do a lot for a lot of people. It is something that was created after a very careful process with tremendous respect for individual privacy, for confidentiality. In the first year, this card will be free, so we can get it launched properly. In future years, there will be a modest charge for the card. Of course, when we provide the ID card, we will not ask the immigration status of anyone applying. And I'm going to ask all my friends in the media, and including in the media that writes and speaks in different languages, to amplify that point. No one will be asked their immigration status in applying to the library for an ID, for a municipal ID, because it's not pertinent. If you're a New Yorker, that's all we care about. If you're a New Yorker, we want you to have access to this ID. It will be accepted by all city agencies, including the NYPD, which again played a key role in developing the approach. And in addition to the partnership with the libraries and the cultural institutions, we're pleased to announce that more than 10 major financial institutions have joined into this effort. And I want to thank them because they share the same impulse. They want people to be included. They want people to have an opportunity to participate properly in our economy, and they're stepping forward to help that happen. IDNYC will benefit, again, a whole range of people, but it'll also be very important for some of our most vulnerable fellow New Yorkers. Folks who are homeless, think about that for a moment. If you're homeless and you have been homeless, how hard it is to get an ID card, why you don't have a home, you don't have a fixed address. This will be part of solving that problem. Folks who are transgender, who have been, in many cases, treated unfairly and improperly in terms of the right to identify themselves. Children in foster care, again, another population that we care about deeply that's been transient. Formerly incarcerated, who are trying to work their way back in society, and it's in all of our interest that they work their way fully back to a positive role in society, but if we don't give them a foundation like their identity back, you can imagine how hard the next steps are. And something that we have talked about a lot over this last year in the minds of all Americans are veterans. We want to make sure that every veteran gets all the support and the benefits due to them, so there will be a special veterans designation on this card to help each and every veteran get the benefits they deserve. And that's in everyone's interest because they've served us and they've stood up for us. Now, even if you have ID, there are a lot of benefits to this card. I have noticed many an individual duly picked up on the notion that with this card, this year only, comes a free one-year membership to 33 cultural institutions. That did get the attention of many New Yorkers. And Mary Chu, to my left, is especially excited about this fact. One of the people who really enthusiastically embraced the notion of the card. She's a grandmother from Jackson Heights. She watches 2 granddaughters after school and on the weekends. And a lot of times that means staying home with them. But she wants to do other things with her granddaughters. She wants to educate them and expose them, so she wants to take them to places like the Queens Botanical Garden and have the opportunity to do that in a way she can afford. So I want to thank you, Mary, for being a good grandmother and getting ready to expose them to culture of all kinds. Other benefits, Big Apple RX, the city's prescription drug discount card, is now going to be integrated into IDNYC. And You know, on late night advertising, they say, but wait, there's more. And there will be discounts on movie tickets, Broadway shows, the YMCA, and city recreation centers. You can't afford not to have an IDNYC card. How do you get one? Pick up the phone and call 311, and you will find enrollment centers across the 5 boroughs just like this one. You sign up, and the card is sent to you within 2 weeks at your home. I want to say a few words in Spanish before I before I introduce the other speakers, but I want to just say this notion of inclusion, I really want to emphasize, this is what made New York City great. Go back to our origins as a modern city. It's because we were a place for everyone that this place has worked. It's because great energy and minds and entrepreneurship and creativity flowed here from all around the country, all around the world, because this was the open city. A lot of places in the world, even to this day, are typified by a spirit of exclusion and limitation. New York City has always been the place for inclusion and possibility. We defend that. And this ID epitomizes keeping this an open city, making it a city for all well into the future. En español, desde hoy, la tarjeta de identificación municipal está disponible para todos los neoyorquinos. Esta identificación es un documento oficial, accesible y seguro. Esto es muy importante para las personas que antes no podían obtener una identificación oficial, como los inmigrantes indocumentados, los jóvenes, las personas mayores y los desamparados. La tarjeta de identificación municipal es una muestra de que la ciudad de Nueva York respeta a todos los que viven aquí. No dejaremos que ninguno de nuestros residentes viva en las sombras. With that, I want to say clearly, the most indispensable person in this process has been the Speaker of the City Council. Her commitment was extraordinary throughout. This was not a snap-your-fingers, easy kind of thing to put together. It took incessant work and focus, and I cannot remember a discussion for months and months when the Speaker didn't raise this issue and remind us of how urgent it was to get it done, and because of her support, it got done. Speaker Melissa Mark-Viverito.
You have to say it may be rainy and kind of yucky outside, but it is a beautiful day nonetheless. This is a day that we have been waiting for, and one that I want to thank the mayor for helping us get to this point. Your administration, in just the year that you've been in office, really speaks to inclusion. It really speaks to collaboration, and it really speaks to bringing everyone and folding everyone into the fabric that is this beautiful city. And this card here today and this rollout is a testament to that. So gracias, Alcalde de Blasio. Thank you, Mayor de Blasio. And although they have been mentioned, you know, again, a collaborative effort, the City Council works very strongly as a legislative body in collaboration, and the lead sponsors, Council Members Drum, Council Members Menchaca, along with my colleagues here, our Majority Leader, Jimmy Van Bramer, and Peter Koo, that represents this district, were all instrumental alongside the staff of the Council in getting to this point today, and I really want to make sure that they get a really strong shout out. So today is an important day for this great big city that is New York, La Gran Manzana. We often talk about not leaving people behind, about taking care of the undeserved, and about standing up for those who have been marginalized. And I am proud to say that today we are doing just that. Today we are sending a message that New York City is a beacon of hope, a beacon of optimism, and a beacon of opportunity. We are saying that, yes, we still want those huddled masses yearning to breathe free. But we're also saying that when you are here, you won't be forgotten, and you won't be disregarded, and you will not be ignored. And why? Because you are a New Yorker. We are all New Yorkers. And in many ways, the IDNYC we are unveiling today is more than an ID card. It is an affirmation. It's an affirmation that if you live here, if you pay taxes, and if you send your kids to school here, you are a New Yorker. It's an affirmation that if you came here on your own many years ago, if you came here with your family recently, or you made your way here by other means, you are a New Yorker. And it's an affirmation that if you are transgender, if you are homeless, if you are a senior, if you're undocumented, if you're a veteran, you are a New Yorker. And this is an ID card for all of them and all of us. For too long, many of those who will benefit from this card were on the outside looking in. But this ID card changes that. You can use IDNYC to enter all city buildings like schools. You can use IDNYC for access to city services. And thanks to Commissioner Bratton and the NYPD, police officers will accept the IDNYC as valid identification. You're also going to be able to use the IDNYC for access to sign up for free membership for 1 year to 33 of New York's finest museums, gardens, zoos, and other cultural institutions. And this is obviously so critical to expand the horizons of our young people in particular. It really is an expanded educational universe that we're opening up for every family here in New York. Applications will be available in 25 languages, and if you don't speak one of those languages, there will be people to help. So today, New York City is living up to its highest ideals about who we are as a city, that we are welcoming, that we're united in common purpose, and that we are forward-thinking. Time and again, New York City has shown that on immigration and other matters, we are unafraid to lead, unafraid to fix injustices, and unafraid to think boldly. This ID card is a validation of that, and I am proud of the work we've done and the work that we are going to continue to do. So for that, thank you, and I will say a few words in Spanish. Buenos días a todos. Hoy estamos enviando el mensaje que Nueva York es un faro de esperanza, que la identificación de Nueva York es más que una tarjeta de identificación, que es una afirmación que tú eres un neoyorquino. Si eres trans, si no tienes hogar, si eres estudiante o si eres indocumentado, esta es una tarjeta de identificación para todos los neoyorquinos. Y las aplicaciones estarán disponibles en 25 idiomas y este es uno de los lugares donde la gente puede inscribirse. Repetidamente, la ciudad de Nueva York ha demostrado en materia de inmigración y otros asuntos que no tiene miedo de liderar, no tiene miedo de corregir injusticias y no tiene miedo de pensar con audacia. Esta tarjeta de identificación es una validación de todo esto y me siento orgullosa de la labor que hemos hecho y que seguiremos haciendo. Así que gracias a nuestro alcalde, Bill de Blasio, a mis colegas John Menchaca, Van Bramer y crew y a todos que han hecho este día posible. Muchas gracias.
I want to bring up the Queensborough President, Melinda Katz, and I want to say she's been an extraordinary advocate for this card. She and I can debate and will debate whether the most diverse borough is Brooklyn or Queens, but any way you slice it, she cares deeply for all the people that make up this borough and understands fully what this idea will mean for them. Queensborough President Melinda Katz.
Good morning. Soy Melinda Katz, Presidente de Condado de Queens. Eso es todo. That's it. I want to thank Mayor de Blasio, of course, Speaker Mark-Viverito, and our Majority Leader, Jimmy Van Bramer, Peter Koo, all the electeds, all the folks, and of course the sponsor, Council Member Danny Drum, for this. So I am the Borough President of Queens, and, you know, it is amazing that we talk, you know, Mayor de Blasio and I have this thing, but, you know, we are over 46% foreign born here in the borough of Queens, and we are proud of that every single day. And, you know, the mayor, one of the things I love about the mayor is the fact that his administration really does focus on tangible impacts. And it's amazing to me. First of all, I love that he did this in the Queen's Library. Thank you, Bridget, and the trustees of the Queen's Library. But I think the importance of the municipal ID can actually be summed up in 1 minute. So I became the borough president in January last year, and my 6-year-old started first grade in the New York City public school system. And so in September, of course, I started being a lunchroom parent. So the security guard's right in front of the door. I walk in. All the parents, hey, borough president, congratulations. We haven't seen you since you got elected. Your child goes here. That's amazing. Everybody's congratulating me. I'm shaking hands in the hallway. It was terrific. Security guard's right there. I get up to the security guard. She says, ID, please. I said, you're kidding. You just saw everyone saying hello to me. Ms. Katz, Melinda, blah, blah. I said, this is my son. He's going to school here. He's late today. I forgot why I was there that day. But she literally would not let me in without an ID, literally. And I told this story at the security officer's graduation in front of Commissioner Bratton just to make sure that she got credit. So they had to call down the principal of the school, who I had funded for the last 10 years while I was council member, 8 years while I was council member, every year. And she had to come down and identify me to allow me access to my child. My child was in that school, and I couldn't get in because I didn't carry a pocketbook and I didn't carry a wallet. And it was a tangible impact, Mr. Mayor and Madam Speaker, that I felt so deeply right there and then, because anyone who tries to keep the distance between you and your kids, now everyone's going to have an ID. Now, if someone who is undocumented walks into a school to see their child, or to be a lunchroom parent, or to be part of the PTA, they don't have to be escorted around that school, because that's exactly what happens. And I said to the principal, I want to know exactly what happens if you don't have ID. They said you have to be escorted around the whole school. And that, Mr. Mayor, is a tangible impact. So from a borough that's over 46% immigrant, from a parent who wants access 100% of the time to their child, to all the cultural institutions that we have here in the borough of Queens that you've opened up the doors to you and the sponsors, we say thank you very much.
In the interest of making things fully clear, Borough President and I both commend that school safety officer for doing her job, and we want all of our children protected, and that's a great example because we want our school safety officers to do nothing less than check ID every single time. But if you don't have ID, it doesn't work. So another fine example. Now, I want to bring up a leader who really, I think, has done so much to express the reality of immigration today and what it means for so many people here in the community of Flushing and in the other elements of her district, folks who are such a dynamic part of the growth of this city, but again, who too often go unrecognized and unsupported. And I think it's fair to say there is no one in the Congress who has a greater sense of passion in terms of fighting for our immigrants and their rightful place in our society. I'd like to welcome Congresswoman Grace Meng.
안녕하십니까? Namaste, assalamu alaikum, tajahao. And if I were to continue, we'd be here all day because of the diversity of the AAPI community. I'm Congresswoman Meng, and it's an honor to be here. And I primarily wanted to be here to express my gratitude to Mayor de Blasio and his administration, to Speaker Melissa Mark-Viverito, and of course to the bill's main sponsor, my good friend, Councilman Danny Drum. Let's give them a round of applause. People want to come out of the shadows. People want to be able to enroll their children in school. People want to be able to continue paying taxes, and people want to be able to apply for jobs. And this is something that's important to the entire city, and I really wanted to be here to say thank you to all of you. And really just to encourage everyone to apply for this card. This is something that I will be applying for. My husband, our whole family, well, those over 14, will be applying for. And you can apply for people in Queens right here in the Queens Library in Flushing. So I just wanted to be here to say thank you. This is not a solution or the end-all for what is really necessary, which is comprehensive immigration reform. And that's something... I've only been in Congress for 2 years, so I still remain hopeful and optimistic. We will, at some point, get it done, but I hope that we'll be able to continue our work together with this wonderful administration. Thank you so much for recognizing a need that really needed to be fulfilled.
Our last speaker, Esther Sanchez Morales. So Esther will give her remarks in Spanish, and then we'll have celebrity translator Melissa Mark-Viverito translate for her. Esther came here from Mexico over 18 years ago, so she's been a part of our community for a long time. Mother of 3, and will be getting her ID card today, and she is excited about that fact. Esther Sanchez Morales.
Casi no llego aquí, pero buenos días. Estoy muy agradecida con Dios por haberme permitido estar en este lugar. Mi nombre es Esther Sánchez. Soy de México. Llevo 18 años viviendo en la ciudad de Nueva York. Resido en Queens y tengo 3 hijos en escuelas públicas. Estoy muy emocionada. Hoy es un día muy importante para mí y para personas como yo, que por mucho tiempo han vivido en la ciudad sin una identificación oficial. Estoy muy agradecida por las oportunidades que este país y esta ciudad me han dado. Quiero contribuir a esta ciudad, pero a veces la falta de identificación me impide lograrlo. He tenido conflictos para entrar a hospitales para llevar a mis hijos al doctor. Y en ocasiones no me han permitido entrar. Por falta de un ID y no han aceptado mi pasaporte. A veces he tenido problemas entrando a las escuelas de mis hijos, tal y como le pasó a la presidenta del borough de Queens. Y pensé que yo era la única que he pasado esta situación, pero al hablar con más personas, más madres, me di cuenta que somos muchas las personas que hemos pasado por esto. También tengo el mismo problema para entrar a cualquier edificio municipal. Para mí, esta identificación es la llave a una vida más completa. Además, pues pienso usarla para llevar a mis hijos al museo, al zoológico y lograr descuentos en medicinas. Gracias a los líderes de la ciudad por reconocer esta necesidad de nuestra comunidad sin importar el estatus migratorio y ayudarnos a salir de las sombras. Desde la fecha que apliqué para mi identificación, siento que ya existo, que ya existo en Nueva York, que soy ciudadana de Nueva York.
You know, you may not have been able to understand, excuse me a second, the words, but the sentiment is very powerful about the impact that this ID will have for Esther and so many others. So I'm just going to loosely translate what she has said. She has been living in this country, Esther, for 18 years, and she resides here in Queens with 3 children in public school. To her, it's a very important day personally, and she knows from many others who have been living in this city without any sort of official ID form. She is very grateful for the opportunities this country has provided to her and that this city has provided to her. She wants to contribute fully to the city life, but at times the lack of an ID does not allow her to do that. She has had conflict. She's not been able to enter hospitals to take her children to doctor's visits. She has not been able, because they won't even accept the passport that she has. She has been having difficulty going to public schools, and she referenced the story of the borough president, who also has not been able to. And she felt many times that she was alone in this. But in talking to other mothers, she's realizing that others are experiencing things. This ID card is the key to having a more fulfilling life. And instead of just taking it, taking the kids to the museum and to visit other cultural institutions and also receiving discounts, she's extremely thrilled. And so she wants to thank everyone that made this day possible, and that we are validating those even that don't have a official documented status. And so since the time that she has applied for the ID, she feels that she exists in New York, and that she is part of this city, and that she is a citizen of New York City. Yes.
Melissa, please tell Esther she will not have to wait in line.
Que no vas a tener que esperar en fila para conseguir la identificación.
I'd like to present her with.
Le va a presentar con su identificación. Qué bueno, qué bueno.
Felicidades. De nada. All right, we are going to first do questions on this topic, and then we will do questions on other topics. I'd like to ask three of the folks who really played a crucial role in achieving the work, doing all the work that led to the actual day when we could hand out an ID to someone like Esther. I'd like to call forward our Commissioner for the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, Nisha Argawal, our HRA Commissioner, Steve Banks, and our Director of the Office of Operations, Mindy Tarlow. Please come up and join. So you will have the benefit of their wisdom in the question and answer process. Questions on topic? Louder?
Sorry. In the press release you put out, it said there are 10 banks that accept the card as identification. What is the city doing to get more banks on board, and what was the process in terms of bringing them on board to the ID program?
We've been working very closely with both the National Federation of Community Development Credit Unions as well as with the New York State Banking Association to engage federal regulators on this issue as well, to ensure that they issue clear guidance about the ability to accept IDNYC. And we're hopeful we'll get more institutions over time through that advocacy.
Andrew.
The NYCLU has raised some concerns about people who might be hesitant that this just puts them in an official record and that the city and other government entities might be able to track them. How do you allay those concerns?
I'm going to have Nisha speak to some of those details, but I'd like to emphasize there was tremendous care in this process to recognize privacy rights, confidentiality. But I can also say that right now, real world, I mean, you heard stories right here of what it means to not have ID. So we should not let those legitimate challenges and complexities stand in the way of solving people's problems. But we believe we've done it in a way that is respectful and careful and obviously very carefully calibrated to the law. But I want to give you one example. When someone comes in contact with law enforcement and doesn't have an ID, there are occasions where that leads to an arrest because the law enforcement officer has no choice but to arrest someone for the absence of ID. I think it is so much more appropriate to help people minimize a situation like that because the law enforcement officer will have the information they need from an ID card approved by the NYPD. I actually think it's going to allow people to live more easily and in greater harmony with law enforcement, for example, to have that ID card.
As the mayor mentioned, we've been very thoughtful about the privacy concerns and responsive to some of the issues that community members raised. When we issued the rules for this program, Commissioner Banks of HRA, which is the program administrator, also issued 4 different executive orders that really amplify the privacy and security of this card. Some things like providing notification if requests come in for an applicant's information so that they can intervene in those contexts. Also, very strict procedures about how to vet any requests that may come through. And it's important to remind everyone that when the law passed, there was language in it that said both that information would not be shared unless legally required, and that's a very high standard. And in addition, for law enforcement, that they would require a judicial warrant or subpoena in order to be able to access the information. So we think we've very much addressed the concerns of the NYCLU and others.
Prevent fraud and people misrepresenting their names or ages when applying for something.
One of the great aspects of this process of developing the card is that we've been working closely with NYPD and specifically with their intelligence unit in developing the security and anti-fraud features of the card. So the card itself actually has many embedded features that would prevent it from being easily duplicated. Also, our process of enrollment has a very skilled enrollment team that can look at documents that people submit, ensure their authenticity, as well as a back office review process if that's needed. And even simple things like having a card mailed to your home address confirms that the person who's receiving the card actually lives at that address. So there is, from really beginning to end, a range of different ways in which to prevent this card from getting into the wrong hands or the same hand multiple times.
And multiple documents are necessary.
And multiple documents are necessary. So there's a point system that's been created, similar to the DMV. So a number of different combination of documents to prove identity and residency can be utilized, and we have the ability to verify all of those documents.
Follow up on an earlier question in terms of this, sort of catalog of people who may be undocumented. Is there concern at all about interplay with the federal government here? I mean, and in the future, if leadership in Washington changes and perhaps makes a stronger stance towards supporting undocumented immigrants or anything like that, is there a concern about
a stronger stance towards
supporting undocumented immigrants or anything like that? I mean, I know it's obviously not the policy of the city, but is there concern about how the federal government might have access to these records? And also, in terms of the documents that people need to obtain this ID, is there a sense of whether or not people who are targeted by this program, people who are homeless or undocumented immigrants, that they have what's necessary to obtain this ID?
So let's separate the pieces. On the first one, I'm going to turn to Nisha on both, but I want to say my view on the first one is we've seen a number of administrations in Washington over the last, let's say, quarter century, very different viewpoints. I think there was a very different approach, say, from the George W. Bush administration to the Barack Obama administration. And yet, a commonality was the city of New York, also under different administrations and different parties leading in the mayoralty, remain committed to protecting our residents and to recognizing in a federal system that localities have very substantial rights, and we utilize those rights. So I don't see a scenario where a change in Washington would undermine our right to respect and protect our own people. But I'll let Nisha speak to that further. On the second point, I think there's two important answers. One is we always worry about any unintended consequences when the action we take. And people cared deeply about supporting our immigrants. That there are in other important parts of our city, other important populations of our city, that maybe there might be a stigma effect. Our view is, first of all, the first priority here is to address people's needs. And if people can't get an apartment, they can't get a bank account, they can't get into their child's school, that is such a profoundly bad situation. They can't have a normal relationship with law enforcement that you first have to address that is sort of the first priority. But to make sure there wasn't stigma, all of the commissioners here, I want to thank we have an all-star team of commissioners in this row and here, all of them put their heads together on how to make this something for everyone. And I assure you, I have talked to folks who their families have been in this country for generations. They want the ID. I've talked to people of all different backgrounds, young and old, and everyone now sees it as something that's convenient and positive and opens up lots of opportunities and lots of benefits. So I think that's going to take away the notion that this is for some small subset of our population. I think it's become much more universal the way it's been constructed. I want to speak to this.
Just to underscore what the mayor said, this is an ID card where we are not going to be asking for immigration status. So it's just a population of New Yorkers. And for that reason, people should feel secure that it isn't a sort of sitting duck database for immigration. Beyond that, there are really strict protocol in place to be able to defend against requests should they come. And then the last thing to remind everyone is that in the legislation itself, in 2 years, there'll be a look into what documents are being retained as part of the program, et cetera. So if things really go haywire in D.C., we have the ability to change our program if we need to.
I had asked about whether or not the people being targeted for the program have the forms of ID necessary to obtain a municipal.
Great question. So in the process of developing this card, we did a number of different focus groups with the different target populations, also to get a sense of what documents people do have. So whether it be an expired foreign passport within the last 3 years, things like that, we feel confident that the list of documents that are available to use to get the card will meet the need. We also, HRA has the ability to add 1-point documents to the list without going through rulemaking. So if we need to amend, we can.
You will remember the highly regarded American film Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Well, what we're seeing 17 locations around the city today is people are lining up enthusiastically to be a part of this. And, you know, when you create something new, I will say that many meetings and people didn't know how folks in the administration and our partners outside, we didn't know what would happen on day one, as with any great experiment. But the people are voting with their feet. They want this card. They feel comfortable with it. They believe in it. And that's very, very gratifying, and that proves how important the idea was. Josh?
Do you think, Mayor, that this will affect at all the fight in Washington over immigration? Is this going to change anything? Perhaps not in the next 2 years with the Republican Congress, or perhaps maybe you feel differently?
Well, no, I do think change is coming. And I think it's going to be progressive change. I think it's going to be positive change. I appreciate the previous question, but I actually think things are trending in the direction of comprehensive immigration reform. And I'll give you a few points why. First, we were very honored a few weeks back to gather mayors from around the country who are enthusiastic about implementing President Obama's executive action, enthusiastic about actually getting opportunity for people who live in their cities across the country, every region represented, because those are the people we represent. Those are the people we're here to serve. So I think what's happening on the ground is a greater embrace of all of our people. And I think what's going to happen is with every step taken on the ground, it's going to make it harder and harder for Washington to avoid acting. I said back at that point, there's a powerful analogy. They're very different issues, but they're very similar in terms of the kind of controversy and fundamental questions of human rights that have been developed 10 years ago in America on the question of marriage equality. You would have said that it would be a long wait for fairness, and then you saw the dominoes fall in a good way, one by one. And now you have effectively a national policy. Even though it isn't fully complete, there's more work to be done. Practically speaking, state after state after state, it's the creation of a national policy. I think you're going to see a parallel on the ground on immigration rights that will create the kind of pressure that will actually force federal action. I also think a lot of people at the federal level in both parties recognize that further delay is bad for our national strength and security and politically untenable. Finally, I had an occasion back in July. I've spoken about this a couple of times, so I really think it bears noting. I don't think there's a more powerful moral voice in the world today than Pope Francis. And when I was at the Vatican in July, I met with the second most important official at the Vatican, the Secretary of State, Cardinal Parolin. And he had just come back from Mexico trying to address the unaccompanied children crisis, to great concern to the Catholic Church. And I described to him the notion that next year, this was July, so I said by 2015, New York City will have a municipal ID program. He said, what is it going to be? And I said, it means anyone can be respected and identified and treated as a full member of our society. His eyes literally lit up, because I think he saw in it a moral message that would have a transcendent impact. And we are the biggest city in the country, and we are in many ways the global capital. So for us to say we're going to embrace everyone will have an impact on the national and international debate. And I want to thank Nisha Agarwal, because when Cardinal Parolin was here a few months later, she got him his own then mock-up Muni ID card. And I'm going to tell this story because I think it's time. Nisha was asked on short notice to put one together for both Cardinal Parolin and Cardinal Dolan, who also, as you know, Cardinal Dolan has been extraordinarily supportive of these efforts. So Nisha did her best to fill out the information. She got the address for the Vatican, all that. But then there is a point on the card of who is your emergency contact. So Nisha thought it should be Pope Francis for Cardinal Parolin, and she completed the card and gave it to him. So thank you for being quick on your feet, Nisha.
The overwhelming majority of the people applying for this card want to contribute in a positive way to society here in New York. You talked, though, about cross-referencing. Will there be any effort to weed out any small number of individuals who might have outstanding warrants in their home countries, people who might have been fleeing prosecution in their own countries?
The only individuals who might potentially be weeded out are individuals who might pop as a hit in the OFAC database, which is around sort of terrorism, and it's something that banks run that check as well. Otherwise, a past criminal history, things like that, are not necessarily going to disqualify you from being able to get the ID card, but being on the OFAC database is the only context in which that would happen.
And outstanding warrants with countries that we may have extradition treaties with?
It's not something that we are anticipating, though we can, look into that. It's not something that we've built in to reject.
Well, let me add that you want people to have ID in the interest of all of our security. It's just a good thing for the most mundane problems to much more serious problems. You want people to have ID. This is something I heard so consistently from law enforcement. So it's a very fair question, but now take it the other way around. Would you rather someone be absolutely disconnected and unknown? I don't think that's particularly good. I think you want everyone to be a part of this society, and having a government ID is a good thing on many levels. I think it's part of being a full part of society. And then if we ever need to contact someone, we at least have that ability to do so. On topic, yes.
Mr. Mayor, many of the people who are here have hoped that if this program actually works, it might be a first step to perhaps one day getting something done with this day and getting a driver license. Are your hopes that might happen?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, I said this back in 2013. There were obviously a number of forums and debates, and this issue came up. I absolutely believe we should go ahead and do as several states have done and offer driver's licenses to those who qualify, and they have to qualify like everyone else. But if someone happens to be undocumented, it should not stop them from having a driver's license, because the alternative is a lot of people will be driving without a license, and that's not safe or healthy for any of us. At the time I was talking about this issue, the state of Colorado had just approved access to driver's licenses in that state for undocumented individuals. If the state of Colorado can do it, politically and practically, I assure you the state of New York can and should. On topic.
New Haven and some other cities have
Please.
New Haven and some other cities have tried this in the past. What did this city learn from their efforts?
I'll have Nisha talk about the details, but we were inspired by their efforts. We learned a lot. We learned that it could work. And we learned also that in those cities, law enforcement officials thought it had been a net positive because it had encouraged communication and contact between community residents and law enforcement.
Exactly. We learned quite a bit from other cities' experience. For example, in Los Angeles, the city there passed legislation. They haven't started implementing their card, but they really thought about libraries as a primary site for enrollment of the ID card, which makes a lot of sense because libraries are so welcoming, inclusive, open to all communities, and especially to immigrant communities. We learned quite a bit about that from Los Angeles. We learned a little bit about the design from San Francisco, and also in our focus groups. Many immigrants in particular said we want something that looks official and that looks bureaucratic and looks like a real ID card. So we learned a little bit about design from San Francisco, and we learned what to do and not to do on financial inclusion through other cities like Oakland, where it's important to have a financial inclusion component. We have that with our 10 or so banks that have signed on so far, but maybe we'll wait on things like prepaid debit functions because the fees right now with some of the products that are available are pretty high. But if a better product comes along, we'd love to include that as well, as Oakland has. So we learned quite a bit from all the other cities, and we're hoping to take that example and take it to the next level.
And the item I referenced, there was some real good research done in New Haven about how it deepened the connection with law enforcement and led to more communication and contact in a productive way. On topic, please.
Sorry if this has been said before, but will this be accepted at hospitals?
At hospitals? I don't see why not.
Don't see why not. Absolutely. This will be accepted to access all city services and city buildings.
Again, I would say for hospitals and other institutions, the worst case scenario is no ID. You know, the thing that makes their lives much more difficult is no ID. Commissioner, are you with me on that one? I am. Thank you. Commissioner Bassett has affirmed as the healthcare expert in the room. Last call on topic. On topic, going once, going twice, off topic. Yeah.
Mayor, later today we anticipate the police department is going to release the crime statistics for the week, which our understanding is will reflect an uptick in summonses and arrests. Yes. How confident are you that the slowdown, if there was a slowdown, is over? And how confident are you that your relationship with the police department is on better footing?
I'm confident we're moving in the right direction. You'll hear all the details from Commissioner Bratton and Chief O'Neill. But I think I said several times in the last few weeks, we have work to do to move forward as a city, to deepen the relationship between police and community. And I want to do everything I can do to make sure there is mutual respect and understanding. But I do feel certainly that we're moving in the right direction.
Mayor, as a related question, we've heard from Bratt and some other officials over the last couple of days of the message of if you don't get these numbers back up, you're going to face some problems. Is your message also to the police officers who may or may not have been involved in this work slowdown, get back to work or else?
My message is, first of all, we are moving in the right direction. Second, Commissioner Bratton and Chief O'Neill know how to handle this situation, and they're doing it correctly. I have absolute faith in both of them. So in terms of the specifics of how to go about it, I refer your questions to them. By definition, every public servant needs to do their job. But I think in the interest of moving us forward, they've taken the right approach, and we're seeing good results. Yeah.
I did not quite understand. How are you going to solve the problem between the mayor, you, and the NYPD?
I don't talk about myself in the third person, first of all. Well, again, I think I wouldn't make it monolithic. NYPD is made up of 35,000 uniform officers, 50,000 employees overall. Each and every one is someone who participates in our society, even when they are off duty, has their own views, whole range demographically, you name it. Over half live in the city, over half are people of color. So I really hope as we move forward, and we will move forward, that we respect the diversity of the NYPD and the diversity of views amongst the rank and file. But I think I can say this. I want to remind everyone where we were the first 6 months of the year, because that wasn't long ago. In the first 6 months of the year, I got a lot of very positive feedback up and down the NYPD, rank and file officers and all over the city for choosing the finest police leader in this country, Bill Bratton, as our commissioner. I got a lot of positive feedback for supporting the broken windows strategy. I got a lot of positive feedback for the investments we made in overtime, in additional training, in lights in public housing developments so officers would be safe as well as residents. We then had a series of tragedies, unspeakable tragedies, starting with what happened to Eric Garner and everything that played out in Ferguson, and obviously most painfully and shockingly the murder of 2 officers. Of course, that's going to create challenges and tensions all around. But we're going to move forward. And it's obvious that the events in Paris in the last few days are a clarion call to all of us to unify and move forward, because we have to protect the people of the city and the values of this city and this country. And I think our men and women in the NYPD are absolutely motivated to do good and believe in protecting those values. And you're going to see a constant improvement in the dynamic if we all work at communication and understanding. I certainly will. I've been in regular contact with some of the union leaders, as have members of my administration. We're going to keep talking to the union leaders. We're going to keep talking to everyday cops. We're going to keep working for understanding. But most especially, we're going to continue the work we came here to do of bringing police and community together, because there's a lot of unfinished business there. And as we bring police and community together, this city will be safer for everyone, including our officers. By the way, on Monday, last Monday, we showed what reform looks like. A huge decrease in unnecessary stops. The stops that were made resulted in many more arrests per capita, meaning they were better stops, more appropriate stops. A huge decrease in marijuana arrests. The kinds of things that are going to build trust and communication and connection between police and community. It will not happen overnight, and it's certainly harder to happen in an atmosphere of tragedy. But it will happen. We will keep moving forward.
I'm not American. From my perspective, I have the impression that there is a racist problem amongst NYPD officers. Do you still share my opinion?
I think, again, you're talking about 35,000 people, a majority of whom are people of color. So right there, although I appreciate, you're asking your question from your own personal perspective, I have to say I don't think that's an understanding of what we have here in the city. We have a police force that is evolving generationally, that's getting more and more training and support. We have a police commissioner and leadership that have said very clearly we want to build an NYPD that respects everyone, but we also want all communities to respect the NYPD. It's a chicken and egg dynamic. We have to do better on both sides of that equation. No, the vast, vast majority of our officers are here for the right reasons and doing their job very well. In any profession, you're going to find some who do the wrong thing, and there's ways of dealing with that. But no, I think this is a police department that is getting more enlightened all the time and is doing its job better all the time. And this is the other thing. 2014, I understand why it was hard to dwell on the results of the year when we had had such pain and tragedy in our midst. But we also do have to take the long view. What was achieved in 2014 because of the men and women of the NYPD, reduction in crime while improving the relationship between police and community. Here's another fact. Complaints to the Civilian Complaint Review Board have gone down steadily throughout the last 12 months. That is a good sign. That means things are moving in the right direction, and we've got to get back to that work of bringing police and community together. Josh?
Mayor, in view of what happened in Paris, not just to the newspaper, but to the attack on the kosher supermarket, is the police department ramping up patrols at synagogues and other Jewish...
It ramped them up the moment it happened. The NYPD is extraordinary in its ability to respond to global events almost instantaneously, and I commend Commissioner Bratton, I commend Deputy Commissioner Miller. We have a habit. The moment one of us sees such a development on the news, we're on the phone to each other. And it's important to check in, but the game plan is always applied automatically. If there's an attack on a Jewish target anywhere in the world, we reinforce and support major Jewish community locations instantaneously throughout the city. If there's an attack on one of our allies, we immediately reinforce the positions of the allies here in the city. It was Australia a few weeks ago. It was France in the last few days. But we immediately make sure that their facilities are protected. And you've seen very visible NYPD presence at a number of those locations. That continues so long as we believe that that is an atmosphere that creates additional risk to those facilities. But I emphasize, that what happened in Paris is absolutely tragic. And I think it was an affront to all we hold dear and to our democratic values. Here in New York City, we are on alert every single day. We are the #1 terror target. And that has created in us a sense of vigilance every day. There is no down day. There is no day when we're less vigilant. We're vigilant every day. We have 1,000 counterterrorism officers who do extraordinary work. But when a tragedy like this occurs, we reinforce additionally any location we believe to be sensitive.
Two questions. I wanted to find out if you had more details on the Davis settlement. And two, Times story today.
Can we just stay on the first one? Then I'll give you the second one. Will you stay on the first one? I know you're not on the editorial side. The editorial in the Post was so filled with lies and misinformation, I hardly know where to begin on the Davis case. Davis case has not been settled. The Davis case was connected to the other litigation related to stop and frisk, which everyone in the city knows was settled months ago, in which I think there was a fairly universal understanding had to be settled for the good of our city. I remind you, one of the strongest voices that opposed the previous administration's stop and frisk policy was the PBA. Consistently, they said it was putting officers in an untenable situation. of having to have negative encounters with innocent people at the community level. So, one, we don't have a settlement. Two, when and if there is a settlement, it is consistent with the previous approach. Three, the notion that any settlement would suggest disrespect for our individual officers is outlandish, and it's really time that we recognize that the New York Post in particular has been purveying a lot of misinformation, and I'd like people to look out for more than one source when assessing anything. If you look just there, you will not get the whole truth. And so the fact is, when we settled the Floyd case, no one said it was a quote-unquote slur against our officers and suggested we thought they were individually biased. No one on earth believes that. It's not true. It makes no reference to individual officers. It refers to a policy that was broken, a policy of the previous administration which the people of the city voted to end. Additionally, there's a suggestion in the editorial that somehow this would lead to less vigorous policing. No, that's wrong. We will vigorously police our public housing developments. We will continue vertical patrols. But what this will do is clarify the rules for how to do those patrols and how to work with community residents. The supposition of the editorial was somehow people in public housing be less safe and therefore we must care less about them. That's outlandish and inappropriate. We care deeply about all our residents, and people in public housing for a long time have deserved more support, not less. So vertical patrols will continue, but they will be done better and they will be done with the residents in mind and in greater communication with the residents.
Second question, Times quoted some aides of yours as saying you were depressed after the murder of Ramos and Lieu. Are you still depressed over that? Can you comment?
Thank you for leading the witness. No, I was not. I am not. How could anyone with a heart not be saddened by current events? The murder of our officers, and again, I don't know about the rest of you, but I was at that hospital standing over and praying over those two bodies with members of the clergy and members of the NYPD. It's an experience no one should have to have, especially the family members. And I said many times, for the family of the NYPD, that was a traumatic day because they lost two brothers. How could you not feel that? How could you not be deeply saddened? That doesn't clear after a day. That hangs with you. It should hang with you. It's a reminder of the sacrifices men and women in uniform, police and military and others make. So I was saddened, but I'm quite clear about what we have to do to keep moving forward. So there's a lot of armchair analysts out there who typically will not be quoted by name, which is always a warning sign as well, and this cuts across all media. Beware of unnamed sources. But no, I was saddened, but I was also resolute that we have to move forward.
Mr. Mayor, in light of the recent renewed terror threat from ISIS, police have talked about sort of closing the ranks as an act of self-preservation, that they want to make sure that they're safe at all times. Will that impede the efforts to get police officers back to addressing those quality of life issues where the arrests and the...
Again, I believe we're making steady progress. You'll hear a lot more from Commissioner Bratton and Chief O'Neill later. I think our officers have every right to be careful and vigilant in their work. I think they should be careful and vigilant. We have now a pattern of some lone wolf attacks, and a totally individual lone wolf, and obviously people in several cases that were mentally disturbed. And then we have something very different in Paris, as Deputy Commissioner Miller has said, a coordinated, well-planned, tragically well-planned, trained group of individuals. So we've got two kinds of threat in addition to everyday crime. Our officers must be vigilant for the good of all, and particularly to protect their own safety. I encourage that. But I believe the people who get into policing do it because they're committed to protecting others. It's not a job for the timid. It's not a job for someone who wants it easy. If you become a police officer, you're willing to take that risk. And I believe they will continue in this difficult moment to do everything they know how to keep us safe. Yes.
The Staten Island GOP selected District Attorney Donovan as their choice for New York 11. I was wondering if you could talk about your relationship with the District Attorney and how that would translate if he did, in fact, go on to win a special.
I will support the Democratic nominee. But that being said, in my previous personal work with the district attorney, it's been respectful and professional for sure. And I think if he does prevail, he will certainly be an improvement over his predecessor.
Mr. Mayor, can we have your thoughts on the report that came out today of the police officers using chokeholds? The report says that it's usually the first tactic that they go to. Can you just give us your thoughts?
I don't want any misunderstanding of this report now. I want to be clear. I've not read the whole report. I've only seen a summary. First of all, it refers to the years 2009 to 2012 before we got here. Second, it is a small number of cases. I think it's less than 10 cases that are looked at. I think it raises a question about how to create consistency in whatever process is undertaken once a complaint is filed. But I don't want to overstate the scope of the report or suggest that it refers to the current moment, because I think a lot of changes are occurring. As I said, a great reduction in the number of CCRB complaints and the retraining of the police force to try and make sure that people use the proper tactics. So I think the report will be another part of the discussion in this city, but I believe from what I've seen so far, it refers to things that have already begun to change. Last call. Going once. Media? Yes.
I'm Carlos Villa from NTN24. Is the city of New York ready to respond to the threat of ISIS that made recently against policemen and people in uniform?
Yes. Yes. Again, 35,000 men and women under arms here in this city. As everyone knows, that would rank us well ahead of the armed forces of many large nations on this earth, 1,000 of whom are applied to anti-terrorist duties, and an extraordinarily sophisticated process for observing and monitoring any potential threats against us. I think we are the #1 terror target in the world. I also think we're the most fortified position in the world. If you're short of a military base, we are the most fortified location in the world to address these problems, and we have the finest police force. And we have a leadership in Commissioner Bratton and Deputy Commissioner Miller who have worked on these issues literally for decades, well before 9/11, well before we gained a fuller consciousness of the challenges we face. One other point that's crucial. It's not a state secret that a few years ago there was a bit of tension between the NYPD and some of our federal partners. I had spoken several times to the FBI Director, James Comey, who is an outstanding leader. He has affirmed, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, has affirmed that the working relationship between the NYPD and the federal agencies that protect us is at an all-time high. It's at its most productive, most communicative, and that will also benefit the people of the city in terms of keeping us safe. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.